here's the latest. So Trevor Lawrence with the Jags gets 5 years, 275, 200 million guaranteed. That is less than Joe Burrow's 219 million guaranteed. If you go by average salary per year, Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are the two highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL now at 55 million. That would be followed by Jared Goff, who just got to 53 million. Justin Herbert, 52.5 million. Lamar Jackson, 52 million, and Jalen Hurts, 51 million. Right now, those are your $50 million and north quarterbacks.
Sure.
So that's...
And some of those too, like Jalen Hurts right now, and Jalen Hurts earned it, right? He should have won a Super Bowl.
Well, every one of those guys earned it,
Yes,
really.
But after last year, well, Kyler Murray.
Well, I didn't mention Kyler Murray.
Oh, that's right.
He's next at 46.
46.
But he's not at 50.
Yeah, Hurts, I'm just saying with Hurts, there is a thing right now after last year where there are some in Philadelphia, again, asking the question, like, really?
Yeah.
But
when you get to a Super Bowl
and you play that well,
he
earned it.
Honestly, the one in the top, well, I guess that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the top 6 that are over 50 million. The one that's like questionable is the one we're talking about.
Trevor Lawrence.
And I like Trevor Lawrence. I do. I think he's good in that, not last year, but the year before, towards the end of the season, Doug Peterson had him, he was playing great.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of thought, oh man, Trevor Lawrence turned a corner. All he needed was a good coach because he had Urban Meyer. That wasn't really fair to him. Urban Meyer was terrible.
Yeah.
So they bring in Doug Peterson, Super Bowl winning coach. All of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence looks great. Well, he wasn't very good last year.
No.
And that I think that surprised a lot of people. I don't know why that is, but I'm not ready to punt on Trevor Lawrence. But boy, this is a lot of money for a guy who hasn't really done much.
No.
And he's turned it over. I was just reading a stat that said that he's turned it over
a lot.
He leads since being drafted in 2021. He leads all quarterbacks in turnovers.
Yeah, and so I look at Trevor Lawrence, and I don't quite understand why you're doing this now, other than you're just the fear is that the longer you wait, the more the money goes up.
Well, he's played 3 years.
He's played 3 years.
So you get him for 2 more?
Yes.
As a quarterback?
Cost control. You get him 2 more on the rookie deal, and then at that point
But he's not immediately jumping to 55 million.
No.
He stays on that rookie deal. This is for after.
This is for after.
And I think the reason why somebody asked that on the text line too. I mean, as you know, the reason why they do this is they're like, okay, you basically sit down and say, is this our guy?
Yeah.
And if you say yes,
get him now.
You lock him up as soon as you can because it's just the price is only going to go up.
Yeah, because the next time someone signs it, the next time someone signs it, the next time someone signs it, this is the best example of the highest paid is really just about timing. It just is. As long as you are viewed as a franchise guy, the longer you wait, the better off you are. And so maybe this eventually, 3 years from now, when we're in the first year of this extension, maybe you look around and you're like, hey, this is a good deal. But when you look at the other players, other quarterbacks that signed after 3 years, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, those are the players, those are the rookies over the last handful of years that got the contract after the 3rd year. They didn't wait into the 4th. They didn't have to do the 5th. They just gave them the deal. And by any metric, when you look at it from record to touchdowns, to interceptions, Trevor Lawrence is statistically the worst of any of those quarterbacks after that. I do think what helps Trevor Lawrence is that we talked about Trevor Lawrence as this can't miss one of a generation product coming out of college. And I think that's a bit unfair to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is not the best quarterback prospect we've seen since John Elway, but he has that billing. And then he had that second year that was solid. But again, I ask you to go back and look at that second year. These are great numbers if this is 1998. Like, he threw for 4,000 yards, which is solid, but 4,000 yards is kind of a benchmark now of a solid quarterback. Buck, would you do me a favor and look up how many guys threw for 4,000 yards last year in the NFL?
No problem.
I'm guessing that number is significant. 4,000 yards, again, in Troy Aikman's days, oh my God, you're the best player in the NFL. And by the way, it was just over 4,000 yards. It's not that great. And he threw for 25 touchdowns. And by the way, this is his breakout year. This is the one that everyone points to and is like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. 25 touchdowns, which again,
What's your guess? How many players?
10 to 12.
10 exactly. He was the 10th.
Right? Like, it's good, but it's not obscene. 25 touchdowns. Again, do me a favor. How many guys threw for 25 touchdowns or around that? I'm guessing it's probably going to be around that same number.
Very close to that same number. It looks like also exactly 10.
10. So, I mean, again, you're talking about like, the 10, and is that really elite? And, his quarterback rating is in the high 80s, low 90s. But that's the 1 year that everyone points to in 66% completion percentage. He had a solid year. And by the way, his team went 9-8. It wasn't great.
But didn't they go on a run at the end?
They went on a run, and they got in the playoffs. And remember, he played the worst half of football in the history of football.
That's right.
It was atrocious.
The Chargers game.
And then the Chargers absolutely essed the bed.
Yeah.
But in that playoff run,
Brandon Staley,
man. So in that playoff run, he played 2 games. He completed 60% of his passes, and he had 5 touchdowns and 5 picks. Look, and then last year, you can't look at it any other way than last year was a massive regression, right? He was not good. He threw, I think, was it 14 interceptions? So his touchdowns went down, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That went up. His quarterback rating, I think, was an 80. I got to find it here. I want to say it was like an 80. Yeah, it was an 88. Solid. But again, nothing elite. And they went 8-8 and missed the playoffs, including losing the last game of the year. And I know he had some injuries last year. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence can't be a franchise quarterback. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is someone that you throw out.
That quarterback rating, by the way, good for 23rd in the NFL last year. So not great.
In last year, in every meaningful metric that you can come up with of a quarterback, do you realize that he did not make the top 12 in any meaningful statistic that he had last year? So I understand the idea of he's our guy, we're betting on him, and maybe we do it now, and so it looks better in the future as it goes up. But anyone that thinks that Trevor Lawrence is this can't-miss, unbelievable guy, and you have your quarterback for the next 10 years, nothing is certain. Nothing is certain with Trevor Lawrence, and I just think the way we treat him, and I think largely it simply becomes a product of how we viewed him coming out of college. We talk about this all the time. Draft bias. When you're drafted, in the top 5 and you're talked about in a certain way, we view you in a different light. If Trevor Lawrence was a 3rd round pick, if this was Dak Prescott, we would be talking about this in a completely different way. But we don't. It's like we refuse to be critical of Trevor Lawrence. And all I'm saying is when you look at quarterbacks from Herbert to Lawrence to Murray to Hurts to Burrow, Trevor Lawrence is not better statistically than any of those quarterbacks.
First of all, he's only played for 3 years.
Yep.
And I was just looking at Jared Goff because Goff got to $53 million.
Yeah.
And that's easy to get $53 million when you're coming off of, the season that they had, right? As opposed to the season that Jacksonville had.
Yes.
But I actually think that Trevor Lawrence can be a Jared Goff. When you look at Goff's stats, you're talking about a lot of that. You were talking about there was statistical.
Stats. Yeah.
If you look at Goff's stats, look at his first. Now, Lawrence has only played 3 years.
Yeah.
That 3rd year for Goff in LA was great. They went to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
After that, so the last 3 years of Jared Goff, including one of those in Detroit. Now, I'm not saying last season and the year before. Goff's actually been around a while now.
Yeah.
So I'm saying if you take a snapshot of 3 seasons like you have with Trevor Lawrence at the start of his career, Jared Goff has those 3-year runs as well.
Sure.
I mean, he had some times where we were down on him and we were like,
the
Rams.
The last 2 years in LA, especially.
I mean, the Rams traded him. Yeah,
Yep.
The last 2 years in LA, he was, statistically, I'm looking at quarterback rating. It's about where Trevor Lawrence was.
Yeah.
He was about the same guy.
And about the same touchdowns,
And then
interception, had an INT problem.
In his first year in Detroit, they went 3-10-1, and he was not very good.
Does it say something though? All I'm throwing out there is they ran Jared Goff out of town on a rail, and we're like, dude, get the hell out of here. That's all I'm saying.
Well, they upgraded though.
They upgraded. I just think that.
See, wait a minute. I don't think the Rams ran Jared Goff out of town on a rail.
They
I think
paid a lot of money to get him out.
I think what they did was they said, we're not sure if this is our guy. Let's see if we can upgrade. And they found the upgrade.
Yeah, they did.
And Stafford, that's a no-brainer trade.
Yeah. But I'm saying they ate a lot of money for a guy that they paid a lot to. And I just think that there is a chance in 2 or 3 years that we're having the same discussion with Trevor
Well,
Lawrence.
sure, of course. I mean, I don't think anybody can say he's a sure thing. I'm all I'm saying is, the shine was off Jared Goff at one point, and then it came back on.
Sure.
And then it went off, and then it came back. That's kind of what Trevor Lawrence is like. I feel like these guys aren't elite quarterbacks, but they're damn good, and that's the going rate if you've got a guy who's pretty damn good that you think,
boy, it is good to be a quarterback.
Can lead you into the future.
You think about that. You do not have to be elite at anything. You can get 50+ million guaranteed.
Well, the next one is Tua, right?
Yep.
And I was going to say that question came into us from the YouTube stream. Someone asked, Suke, who'd you rather have, Lawrence or Tua?
Gosh almighty. Tua has better. I'll bet you
I
Tua
think
has better
Tua,
numbers.
Tua does have better numbers, but that's why it's a good question.
Well,
It's
Tua
because
has the
some of
injury
that-
risk, too.
But some of that is the offense that he is in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence in that offense is putting up better numbers.
It's a good question. Who would I rather have?
I think I'd rather take Tua.
I think.
And that's barely.
It's barely.
Really close.
Because I don't love Tua.
I don't love either
But
one.
Tua's about to get paid.
I also
Tua's
don't love
about
that
to be
Tua is one hit away from being out of this league.
And that's the part that I think worries me. I think I would take Trevor Lawrence, even though he was beat up last year. I think I would take Trevor Lawrence on size alone. And you're right. Playing in McDaniel's system, it would be interesting to see Lawrence in there. But Doug Peterson runs a good system too, and they gave him weapons last year. They surrounded him. It's not like he has no talent there. It's just funny that we talk about Tua, and it's like this. Oh, you're a product of the system, and you're not that good, and I can't believe they're going to pay him with Trevor Lawrence. We're like, oh yeah, Trevor Lawrence, yeah, 50+ million. Trevor Lawrence is a hell of a lot closer to Tua than he is to Joe Burrow. I would say that.
Yeah.
And I
agree with that.
I have a sinking feeling. We just mark this down. If we fast forward the next 2 or 3 years, I think this will be viewed as a bad contract.